All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. If you've been enjoying our content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all your support. But we're diving into a little bit of a rivalry here, or pretty big rivalry, Iowa and Iowa State. Cody, I'll let you kick things off. What are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this game in general. I always get pretty excited for this rivalry, especially now that both teams are competing in their respective leagues. You know, the last couple of years it was a little bit watered down, just mostly on Iowa's side. You know, they were kind of, the final years of the Fran McCaffrey era didn't go as planned, as most Iowa fans know. But with Ben McCollum in the mix now, you're seeing a completely different style. They're playing one of the slowest tempos in the country, and that's going to be their ticket to kind of keeping them in this game against an Iowa State offense that can just apparently absolutely light it up, particularly from three. They're playing a lot faster this year. It's an interesting contrast of styles now at this point. And just on their side, they're coming off that game against Purdue where they won 81-58 on the road. It was I think the largest margin of defeat by a number one team in their home arena since the AP poll came out. So obviously a super impressive performance that they're going to have to back up in a rivalry game. Very, very excited for this matchup. Two coaches that, I've always kind of been high on, and two teams that I would say have exceeded expectations so far. Obviously Iowa coming off they beat Maryland by 19, but before that, coming off that, they kind of got dominated against Michigan State. They lost that game 71-52. Just couldn't really compete on the glass. I think this is certainly a better matchup for them since Iowa State they're not as daunting physically as Michigan State. So it at least gives them a chance in that regard. So I'm definitely excited for this matchup regardless.
Marcus, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, is Iowa State ever going to miss a shot again? I mean, they've been ridiculous. Obviously, shooting at 44% from three as a team. We saw one of the most ridiculous stat lines last week when they shot at 22 for 30 from three against, was it Alcorn State? That was against when they hung 132 on them, and then of course followed it up with a dominant performance at Purdue. Their offense has been unbelievable. Their defense is, obviously fantastic as well, given what they did to Purdue and, the rate they've been turning teams over. They're first in turnover rate defense. They've been the real deal all season, and that's why they're sitting at 9-0. They got Tamin Lipsey back the other day against Purdue. Then on the other side, it's a sort of a clashing of styles, right? Where Iowa, really wants to play a slow pace and limit possessions and limit transition, and Iowa State, where they're scoring it at 95 points a game, and they're looking to get up and down, shoot a bunch of threes. And they're shooting it, like I said, third in the country. So it'll be interesting to see sort of the chess match here between Ben McCollum and TJ Otzelberger. It should be a really fun game. Obviously, a big time rivalry with Bennett Stirtz on one side and the other side with Tamin Lipsey, who figures to draw that matchup all night. So I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah, Cody, what does Iowa have to do to come out of here with a win? What are their keys to the game?
Yeah, number one is just slow the pace down as much as humanly possible, really. And there isn't really a better candidate to be able to do that than a Ben McCollum team. They're 348th in average possession length on the offensive end. They're going to be walking the ball up the floor every single time. They're going to be crossing that midcourt line with exactly 20 seconds on the clock, making sure they can bleed off as much time as they possibly can, which they did a lot last year. And it was their ticket to a lot of victories at Drake, particularly in that Charleston Classic game when they were playing teams that were more talented than them, but they ended up, dominating those teams and making them feel uncomfortable. They beat a good Vanderbilt team playing this kind of style. Vanderbilt really wanted to get up and down. Drake just didn't allow it. And that's definitely going to be Iowa's ticket to winning this game on the road. they're going to need to be on the defensive side. They're going to need to be way better on the defensive glass than they were against Michigan State. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit easier, like I mentioned, but Iowa State is still a team that can hurt you in this area. They're 36 nationally in offensive rebound rate. They have guys like Joshua Jefferson, Blake Buchanan, who's been really, really good. Dominicus Plata, who has a 14% offensive rebound rate this season. So they're going to be at a disadvantage size-wise. It's just a matter of, I guess, how much of a disadvantage they end up being at. And then going back to the offensive end, it's somebody else needs to step up, particularly in like the secondary scoring area. Like Iowa State is going to high hedge Bennett Stirtz and ball screens, like just like Michigan State did. They're going to force the ball out of his hands, force somebody else to beat them, at least on the perimeter. And Iowa just didn't really have that last game or against Michigan State, at least on the road. They tried to throw Brendan Hawson in there for, I think he only played 7 minutes. He ended up having 7 points in that game, but it just doesn't seem like McCollum wants to have him on the floor for a large amount of games, just I think due to some defensive efficiencies. And McCollum seems to be a more defensive-minded head coach. So, but somebody else is going to have to step up on the offensive end because Michigan State was able to take Bennett Stirtz out of the game for a large sample. And that's kind of always been the concern with this offense, is like when Bennett Stirtz isn't cooking, when teams aren't playing passive pick and roll coverage, like who else is stepping up, because the ball is going to get forced out of his hands. So I'm looking for guys like Fulgaris in the pick and pop or the pick in short roll game. Cale Combs attacking the rim with the ball when Iowa State's forcing the rotation, and he's going to have a chance to attack downhill, like guys like Isaiah Howard, Manyow, and Banks getting on the glass as well. Just like somebody needs to step up and have like a really, really good game if they want to compete in Ames.
Marcus, Iowa State, of course, the favorite here, slight favorite. What do they have to do to stop an upset?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll piggyback off what Cody was just saying. I think they need to take a page out of Michigan State's book a little bit and, again, force someone other than Bennett Stirtz to beat you, right? I think until that method is proven otherwise, I think it's what you have to do. Obviously, Bennett Stirtz is fantastic, but I think it's important. They put a lot of pressure on him, which this Iowa State team, like I alluded to in the opening, is no stranger to. They're going to put pressure on you and try to force turnovers and try to get the ball out of Bennett Stirtz's hands. And I think that's sort of the formula for success on the defensive end for them. You really need to force someone else to beat you. And, if you can, I think, force some turnovers also from this Iowa team, which, they've taken care of it pretty well. They're 69th in turnover rate offense, but they're going to be going against the number one turnover rate defense in the country in Iowa State, who just, turned over Braden Smith 6 times and Purdue 15 times. So, I think this can be an avenue for them to speed up the pace. If they can put some pressure on this Iowa offense and turn it up a little bit and get out in transition, that could really change the game and swing it in their favor. Then in the offensive end, I think it's getting on the offensive glass. This is an Iowa defense that doesn't defensive rebound at a super high rate. They're 131st in the country in defensive rebound rate. Iowa State, they're 35th on the offensive glass. I think it's an avenue for them to have some success. And then I think one of the more important things, right, is eventually Iowa State's going to have a game where they don't shoot it well. It's bound to happen. They're not going to shoot it at 44% all year. So I think it's like, don't fall in love with the three. Obviously, you're hunting the open ones, but this is an Iowa defense that doesn't have anyone on their team with a block rate over 3.4%. They're 148th in 2-point percentage defense. I think this is an opportunity for them to put some pressure on the rim in this game as well. So I think, like, don't fall in love with the three in this matchup. Obviously, they're going to get some open ones as well. They're going to shoot them, obviously, with how well they've been shooting them, but I think they're going to be able to also put some pressure on the rim in this matchup, and I think they really should, given the personnel on the back line for Iowa. So I think those are the biggest things. And then finally, this is an Iowa defense that does turn teams over at a high clip. They're 5th in the country in turnover rate defense. Iowa's taken care of the ball very well up to this point, or Iowa State has. So I think it's just continuing to take care of the ball at a high clip. Obviously, getting Tamin Lipsey back on Saturday will only help that in this game coming up on Thursday night. He's the leader of your offense, the point guard, the general. So, having him will certainly help in that area, but taking care of the ball is going to be ultra important.
All right, Cody, who do you like for this matchup in Ames?
Yeah, I mean, I think Iowa State gets it done. I just think there's a little bit too much of a talent and athleticism gap here in this game for Iowa to really be able to steal this game on the road. Like, I think they have like the recipe to compete and hang around as an underdog in pretty much any game or against any team. If they're not like just absolutely getting smoked on the glass, like just like a team like Michigan State, I think they're going to hang around a little bit more than that. They're going to try to keep the possession count as low as they can. If they can get it down into the low 60s or high 50s, like that's a win for Iowa. Like they're going to be able to take this game down to the wire. But I think Iowa State's high hedge is going to make Bennett Stirtz uncomfortable. And, he did look rather uncomfortable for a large portion of that Michigan State game. And you're running into a more aggressive defense in Iowa State that could potentially give you an even tougher time. And I'm not sure I'm a massive believer in these secondary options. I was a little bit more early in the season, but after that Michigan State game, I've kind of softened my take on this Iowa team. I just think there's a little bit too much of a gap personnel wise between them and the top teams in the country. So I like Iowa State here. I think Iowa has a real chance to keep this within single digits. So I'll say they win it 70-61.
All right, Marcus, who do you like here?
Yeah, I like Iowa State as well. Much like Cody said, I think the talent gap is too big. I think the pressure defense of Iowa State is going to be able to disrupt Iowa's actions. I don't think there's enough talent on that offense outside of Bennett Stirtz, which I suspect TJ Otzelberger is going to make him uncomfortable and force the ball out of his hands. So I just trust Iowa State more, especially with how well they're playing. They're at home, rivalry game. They won't have played since Saturday. They're going to be ready for this one. So I'm going to take Iowa State to win this game. I think they win it by about 10. I'll just say 70-60.
I'm taking Iowa State as well. I think they've been so good this year, and I think they continue to be good. Similar margin as the two of you. I think it is going to be a little more high scoring, but I'm going to say 75-68 Iowa State. Anything else to add here? Or All right, wrapping things up. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.